Hey gang, welcome to today's lecture capture. This is our election day version of this, so I hope you guys enjoyed your day off today and you're ready to get to some work on this now. We're going into organelles today. If you guys remember, the three things that all cells have, right, was the cell membrane, cytoplasm, and organelles. And so today we're going to go into the many different organelles that some cells will have. Not all cells will have all of these organelles. We're going to be going through the first part today, and there are going to be a few more lectures on this. So if you look at the next slide, this is a slide that you should have from your Cells 3 packet. If you guys could fill this out again, I think it would be great. Again, it's just a quick recap about everything we've gone over, just to make sure that your mind is in the right place on this. So fill this in your notes. You can hit the pause button to do that now, and once you've finished, make sure to unpause the video. Okay, cool. So this is also kind of picking up where we have left off before. But what you want to remember is that an organelle is essentially a machine within a cell that has a specific function. Now, if you guys think that I'm being repetitive, it's because I am. I really want you guys to get this idea, right? And if we think of a cell as a factory, you're going to see this analogy come up many times today. We want to think of these organelles as these specialized machines. I'm a really big fan of this picture that we have below here, where it's showing all of the cells, and you can see the people that are actually inside of them working. And it shows all of these cells, all of these organelles within a cell as these different machines within a factory, okay? There are many, many, many different organelles. And these are the ones that we're going to be starting to learn about. We're going to be covering the nucleus today, and several other ones that aren't even on this list. So with that said, let's pick up with the nucleus. This is something that you guys should be a little bit familiar with from our talk about eukaryotes and prokaryotes. The idea with the nucleus is that it serves as the control center right? It's the control center of the cell, and remember, it's only found in those eukaryotes. Okay? And what it has is that it contains all of the cell's DNA, right? And if you remember, DNA is the quote-unquote genetic material, right? Remember, that's what makes you you. Everybody has different DNA inside of them. What's interesting about a nucleus, and remember the nucleus picture is right here to your right, is that it's actually surrounded by something that's called a nuclear envelope. Okay, and what's interesting about the nuclear envelope is that to the nucleus, okay, to the nucleus, it is very similar to cell membrane. All right, it's very similar to the cell membrane, and I say this specifically because the nuclear membrane, it has these things called nuclear pores. Okay, and the nuclear pores are these tiny holes found all over the nucleus. Okay, and what it allows for are different materials to come in and out of the nucleus, all right? And remember, the nucleus is this control center. So there's lots of messages and materials that constantly need to come in and out. All right, so just to kind of go with our factory analogy, right? Just like how a factory control center needs messages, instructions, and blueprints, right? Think of this as like a main office, right? Well, a cell needs many similar things, right? And if this nucleus is this control center, this main office, right? It has many molecules moving through this nucleus to and from the rest of the cell, right? So there's tons and tons of information that is coming into the cell in forms of different materials, and there's tons and tons of information leaving the nucleus in the forms of different materials, okay? In terms that we're going to be learning about later, This term chromatin is going to come up at some point. And once again, you can see the nuclear envelope here. We're not really going to get into this idea of a nucleolus. So our next organelle is actually called a vacuole. All right, and just like every factory needs to store materials, so does every cell. This is what vacuoles do, okay? They store materials in the cell. I want you to think of vacuoles as large sac-like structures, okay, that are able to store materials such as water, proteins, salts, and even carbohydrates. Anything that the cell might need in case of an emergency or it runs out of anything, right? This is going to be stored in the vacuoles, all right? And what's very interesting is that vacuoles are largely found in, let's make this green, plant cells, all right? And what they're able to do is that they increase cell rigidity. What does this mean? Essentially, makes plant cells less, quote unquote, floppy. Okay? That's what rigidity means, okay? Rigidity means that the cell is going to retain its shape and this is something that's really important in plant cells because as water is constantly coming in and out of the cell, and especially how plants might not receive so much water in the winter, it prevents these cells from exploding, okay? From crushing and exploding. Very, very important to have high rigidity in plant cells. And if you look at this diagram on the right, you guys will be able to see that the vacuole is what I'm outlining here in purple. All right, it's this very big sac-like structure that is storing many materials for the cell. Okay? So let's move on to our next organelle. This is the lysosome. And again, going back to our analogy, just like every factory needs to be cleaned, so do cells. All right, and this is where lysosomes come in. Lysosomes are small organelles that are actually filled with enzymes. Whoa. Okay, and it's these enzymes that help break down materials in the cell. Okay, so what exactly can these lysosomes break down? Well, pretty much any macromolecule or any material that's there. So it's able to break down lipids, it can break down proteins, it's able to break down carbohydrates, and a matter of fact, it can even break down old organelles that aren't really functioning very well anymore. So anything that's basically acting as junk in a cell, these lysosomes are able to remove. So anything that's building up, it can remove. And what's very important about this is that the lysosomes actually can help to prevent disease. If junk were to build up in cells, right, it would be much more easy for someone to become unhealthy. And so these lysosomes are helping our body maintain the normal cellular function that we need. Very important. And I thought this was a really cool photo. I hope you guys like it too. So lastly, right here, this is a lot of material coming at you. For today's lecture, the last organelle we're going to learn about is the cytoskeleton. Not everybody considers this an organelle. The book that we use for this class does, and I do as well. So we're going to talk about it. And what I want you to think about is that just as every factory is supported by steel beams, and a roof, all right, cells are too, right? They need structure. Imagine if our body didn't have bones. Imagine if we were just skin and flesh. Would you ever be able to stand up straight or really move? No, right? You'd probably just roll around, you'd crawl, right? You wouldn't actually be able to hold yourself up straight. Cells are very similar, right? They need to have some kind of a backbone. They need these steel beams that a factory has. And that's actually what the cytoskeleton provides. All right? Generally speaking, the cytoskeleton is majorly found in eukaryotic cells. It's not as important in prokaryotic cells. Okay? It's in eukaryotic cells, so the cells that we essentially have, right? And it aids in providing cell structure, movement, and transport. Okay? So three things: structure, movement, and transport. All right, really important, these three things. And there are two main parts to the cytoskeleton. There are the microfilaments and the microtubules. All right? And if you move up here to the top right, you'll see that microfilaments, and number one, they're thread-like structures. So they're really small, they're solidly filled, and they're made up of a protein called actin. Okay, this is very important. In any bio class you will take, you will talk about actin. All right, and these are the structures that help the cell move. All right, they're really involved in the cell being able to move around the right way and get to where it needs to be in the body. All right, so microfilaments are very important. Now, the other part of the cytoskeleton are called microtubules. Now, the big difference between a microtubule and a microfilament is that a microtubule is a hollow structure. All right, if you look up here, right, these guys are thread-like structures. So microtubules are hollow, and what they actually can help with, because of their hollowness, is moving cellular materials we call this transport. All right, and they also help in cell division. Okay, cell division, when a cell grows and divides into two daughter cells. Okay, so that is super duper important that you understand that part of it. Okay, so a microtubule is really known for its involvement in cell transport, right? Getting materials into and out of a cell, as well as cell division. It does aid in cellular movement, but again, the big difference here is that microtubules help in cell transport and cell division. Okay? Whew. All right, so I don't know if you guys felt like you just ran a marathon, but I sure do on this end. So real quick, this is what a cytoskeleton looks like. I think this is wicked cool. The microfilaments are actually all of the, if you see the purple out here, okay, these are the microfilaments, again, that are really aiding in some cell structure, and they help the cell move by getting into different shapes. And then if you see all of these cool little yellow lines throughout, these are the microtubules. These are involved, again, in cell transport and cell division. Many of them don't actually reach the very outside of the cell. And again, this is why they're not as involved in movement as the microfilaments are. But, once again, they both do involve that. And lastly, this is what a microtubule actually looks like. You can see these blue little areas. I'm going to try and make them even bigger. And these are some microtubule action, all right? And they're little hollow things, right, that we can have different materials be transported through. All right, so that is our lecture for today. You guys can take a quick look at this vocab and complete it before the end of class. All right, I hope you enjoyed.